Okay, everybody, we are going to go ahead and get started. The numbers are starting to slow down as people are entering. Just remember, this is being recorded. So if you miss anything, don't feel like you have to take extensive notes as we're going through this. If you miss anything, you can always go back and rewatch it. We will post it on our website. I believe we will also email you the link of the recording, so you will have that to watch as you need to. So we welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to be here. We love to talk about the world of financial aid and help parents, students, families navigate this process because it can be confusing, it can be complicated, and we are here to help. So we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're going to cover tonight, our goals are simply to provide you with a baseline of knowledge. So we want you to be able to review your financial aid offer notification with confidence. We want you to understand what the cost of attendance is. We want to help you understand the process from getting that financial aid offer notification to how that actually translates going to your bill, and how it actually works through the process. And so we're gonna give you that baseline of knowledge. We're gonna go over what the cost of attendance is. We're gonna talk about how you determine your tuition and fees. We're gonna talk in more detail about looking at that aid offer notification. And then we're just gonna go over some things that we want you to think about next and next steps to make sure that you're getting the best financial aid package you can. You've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, the first thing that we're going to look at here is just some important terminology. Financial aid is littered with acronyms, probably like a lot of industries, but these are some of the ones that we use the most, and we are going to use them throughout this presentation. FAFSA, you're going to hear me say that over and over again. That stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The COA stands for the cost of attendance. The EFC stands for the expected family contribution. And the aid offer notification, that's not an acronym, but that's just basically us telling you in an official way, this is the total amount of financial aid that you're being offered. And then remaining need, that's your COA minus your EFC minus your gift aid. And we're going to show that on another slide, and we're going to talk about that in more detail, but we're going to talk about remaining need a lot. So we just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there so you're familiar with that terminology right out of the gate. And as we go through it, we're going to continue to talk about what these things mean and provide more definitions to them for you. Okay, so throughout the presentation, you're going to notice that there are some QR codes. That little QR code in the upper right hand of the slide, those are going to be throughout the presentation. Those are to assist you as you're watching it. You can just hold your phone up, hold the camera up, and it should provide you with the exact link to the thing that we're talking about in this particular slide. So we talked about the FAFSA and the terminology. If you've not completed a FAFSA, we strongly recommend that you do so. It's never too late to complete it, although every year we encourage you to complete it as early as possible. You do have to complete the FAFSA on an annual basis in order to get the best possible financial aid package, especially if you're trying to get more financial aid based upon financial need, unmet need. And so we're going to talk about that calculation and how that works here in a couple slides. One of the things I want to point out right underneath that QR code, we reminded you that's an annual application. In the last 4 years, the FAFSA has opened up on October 1st, so families can complete the FAFSA for the following academic year. So it opens on October 1st. You're using your prior year tax data, and this upcoming year, the year you just completed the FAFSA for, right now it's open. Obviously, we're way past October 1st for this upcoming fall 23 term. But for next year, the FAFSA will not open on October 1st. The Department of Education is making updates to the FAFSA application. The online application is getting an overhaul, and they are telling us that it will not be ready until next December. So be aware of that. We will send out plenty of communications, plenty of notifications through email and on our social media pages, but we just want to make sure you're aware of that because that may impact our priority deadlines and when you need to complete your FAFSA by, and we will let you know if those deadlines change. So just be mindful of those priority deadlines every year because that's another trick of this is making sure you complete your FAFSA by that priority deadline to, again, give yourself the best opportunity for the most financial aid eligibility. Okay, so what's the cost of attendance? Well, the cost of attendance is something that we are required to do by the federal government. It's federal law that we have to create this. It is not what you are going to get billed. And we're going to have a couple slides here to talk about everything that goes into the cost of attendance. But the basics of this slide that I want to cover are um, it's an average cost of what it costs to attend Mizzou for one academic year across multiple categories. So it's not just your tuition and fees. It's not just your housing and tuition and fees. It is also other things like toothpaste, toilet paper, entertainment, cell phone bill. We're adding in a bunch of things, other miscellaneous personal expenses, services that you might have to incur while you're a student at Mizzou. And so that gets really confusing really fast. People get their financial aid offer letter, they see that large cost of attendance number, and they don't understand why it's so expensive. Well, a lot of those costs are indirect costs. They're not the direct costs that you're going to get billed. And we're going to talk about this in more detail as we go here. But it's really important to understand that. And we're going to give you some hints and some tips on how to really break it down for yourself of, okay, well, what am I going to owe Mizzou? Or am I going to get a refund from Mizzou? And then what do I need to budget for the rest of my expenses? Okay, so what goes into the cost of attendance? So I talked about we're required to put different elements or different items in a cost of attendance. And we talked about direct and indirect costs on the last slide. Well, the direct costs are the expenses that you are going to be billed by Mizzou. Okay, so that is your tuition and your fees. If you're living in a residence hall or a university-owned apartment, the housing component will be billed directly from Mizzou on your student account, as well as if you get a meal plan, that will also be billed directly on your student account. So this is the portion of the cost of attendance that most families care about. Most families want to know what these costs are and then how much of their financial aid is going to cover these costs. And then from there, they will figure out or they will put together a budget and a plan to pay the rest of the costs. And so what are the rest of the costs? Well, the indirect costs, those are expenses that are not paid directly to Mizzou, but are estimated expenses that might be necessary for attending. These are going to vary by student. So books and supplies, that's going to depend on what major you're in. That's going to depend on what the book cost is for that class. The supplies you might need are going to vary greatly by student. Transportation to and from home, that's not necessarily the same for every student. Some students are going to want to take more trips home than others. So again, that's a discretionary expense where families could potentially, or students could potentially save some money. Now, the off-campus housing and meals. So if you're living in an apartment around Mizzou that's not owned by the university, that will not be billed through Mizzou. And so then that's considered an indirect cost because you have more control over how many roommates you have to split the costs more evenly, how expensive of an apartment you live in. So that's an indirect cost where you have a little bit more control. And again, it's going to be variable by student. And then personal and miscellaneous expenses, we talked about some of those things, toiletries, entertainment, clothing, other things, I mean, just basic living expenses that you don't necessarily think about when you're thinking about how much does it cost to go to college. The other thing I just want to mention really quick is that when we build this cost of attendance and what you're seeing in your financial aid offer notification, that amount of money is split evenly between the fall and spring semesters. We are not including summer in there, and we are only allowed to build that cost of attendance and estimate those expenses for that period of enrollment. So if you're living off campus in an off-campus apartment, or if you're in a resident hall apartment that has a 12-month commitment, we cannot give you a full cost of attendance for housing beyond the months that you are actually enrolled in classes for fall and spring, unless you were to actually enroll in summer as well. That's a common question we get, and it's a common appeal process that students request. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that unless you're actually enrolled during that period of time. So it's just something we bring up because we want you to be able to plan for it. Okay, we talked about EFC and the terminology. So the EFC stands for the expected family contribution. This is also a federal law and is calculated by the information that you provide on the FAFSA. Okay, we cannot change that calculation, or we cannot change the way that is calculated. There are certain situations where we can make adjustments to that, but they're very few and far between. I'll talk about those in a second. But the basics of the EFC, we're going to factor in. This is one of the main factors between cost of attendance and the EFC. We're going to use these two numbers to factor your actual financial need to attend Mizzou. It gauges your family's ability to pay, not necessarily your willingness to pay. So unfortunately, if parents refuse to provide the information on the FAFSA, or are not going to be able to or want to help contribute to their child's education, there's no shame in that. But the problem is that's not going to impact the EFC. We can't change it for that reason. That's just federal law, and unfortunately, that's something that we have to abide by. So, but it drives the student's award eligibility. And again, we talked about when you complete the FAFSA, you're actually completing it from a prior year basis. So you take the year of the fall term, you subtract 2, and that's the tax year that you're using to complete your FAFSA. Now, sometimes a lot of things can change in 2 years from the time you complete your taxes. If financially things have changed significantly, examples that I can think of are if there's a loss of job, significant, maybe the job wasn't lost, but a significant loss of income. Sometimes divorced situations also can impact that EFC. But if there's a significant change in your financial situation from the time you complete the FAFSA based upon that prior year's tax information, please call us and we will have a conversation with you. And we have an appeal process that you can follow called the Special Circumstances Appeal. And we can see if we can change that EFC for you. But one of the things that is really, really critical and important is you must fill out the FAFSA with the correct tax information, because if you don't do that from the get-go, it's going to delay the process of us being able to review it. So just some tips there to get that going as quickly as you can so we can help you out as quickly as we can. Okay, so we talked about how unmet, well, we're going to talk about how financial need is calculated. So how a student's unmet financial need is calculated for the purposes of awarding need-based financial aid programs is the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. Then we subtract out all of the gift aid programs that you're getting. So any federal grants, state merit, institutional grants, institutional scholarships, external scholarships, any type of financial aid or financial resource that you're getting that does not have to be repaid, we're going to include in this calculation. And then that remaining amount of money, that is your unmet financial need. This is how we calculate financial need. So initially, we're just taking the cost of attendance minus the EFC, and then that's how we're determining your need-based grants. And then from there on out, any other additional need-based aid, we're including all other aid that you've already received. Because as you receive gift aid, your financial need decreases because you're getting more assistance to help you with your college costs. Okay, the maximum amount of financial aid a student can receive is a similar formula, but we're taking the EFC out of the equation. So we're going to look at that cost of attendance, and we're going to remove that EFC from that previous equation, and then we're going to subtract out all financial aid programs that the student's receiving. So everything that was in the last slide, but we're also looking at, okay, they can't have loans above the cost of attendance. You can't have federal work study above the cost of attendance. So those things are then added in. And if there's still room left after those aid programs have been applied to the account, then you still have some remaining aid eligibility. That could be another scholarship comes in. That could be you want to take out an additional loan. But you do not have to take loans all the way up to the cost of attendance. We really encourage people to figure out exactly what their budget is going to be for those miscellaneous personal expenses, and not necessarily borrow all the way up to the cost of attendance, because not everybody really needs that full amount. That happens often, and we're trying to help students and families understand that they don't have to do that. Okay, so this is how it feels to parents and families, or this is one of my favorite slides to talk with parents and families and students about is what it really feels like to you. This is kind of what we were talking about. So you're not really thinking of it from the cost of attendance perspective, or at least most people aren't. The most people are talking or thinking about it from how much is my tuition going to cost? How much am I going to owe the university for tuition? And how much is the housing and the dining charges going to cost, or the meal plan? And then how much is my financial aid? Well, the gift aid, that's your financial aid that you're receiving. And not everybody gets all of those programs. Those are just examples of the different things that could apply. But you want to know how much is remaining that you have to pay to the university after that gift aid applies. And that's your out-of-pocket expenses. And so from there, a student and their family has to have a plan of how they're going to pay for the education beyond that. So if you still owe money to the university after your financial aid, your gift aid applies, then you have to have a plan to be able to pay for that. Sometimes that's through loans, and sometimes that's through getting on a payment plan, paying it over time. Working at the same time is maybe taking out some loans, smart borrowing in combination with some working. So there are a variety of different options, and we are happy to talk that through with any student or family that wants to reach out to us and talk through some of the best options for you. But ultimately, this is the challenge of it, and we want everyone to make sure that they're making the best financial decision for their education, and we're happy to help them do so. But you have to be able to cover that gap through one of these types of financial aid programs or through self-pay. Okay, we're going to talk about tuition and fees now. So uh, the cashier's website, which again, there's another QR code on this page, and then the cashier's, the actual web address is down there on the bottom of the page as well. We of course are putting an estimated tuition and fee on your financial aid offer notification. Your tuition and fees are determined based upon the major that you are currently listed as in our system. And so that's determined by your admissions application, what you put in there, so forth and so on. But if you want to change your major, or if you haven't decided your major yet, in this particular example, I went out to the cashier's website. I did a drop down for residency status of Missouri resident, put the full-time 12 to 18 credit hours, and then I put this student as undecided, or in our system that's called the Discovery Center, and then the academic plan is exploring, because you're exploring what you want your major to be. So then from there, by completing those drop downs, in the bottom red box, that creates what your total tuition and fees are per semester. Okay, so then I took that per semester amount, I multiply that by 2, and that's what I can expect that I'm going to pay for the year. And then for our COA purposes, or our financial aid notification purposes, you're going to see that rounded off to the $15,922. And on our website, we actually have them numbered tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And I'll show you an example from our website, or how this translates to our website. But the amount you're going to be charged for tuition and fees varies greatly depending on what major you're in. So this is a tool that you can go out and use, and you can look at that. But basically the cost of the major is the market value to deliver that education and the expenses that go with it. And so different majors have different costs associated with it. So that's why there are different costs per different major. So on the next slide, I'm talking about, again, another QR code that will take you directly to our student financial aid website, where we have all of the different tiers of tuition. We do not actually have the majors listed on our tool, so you have to kind of work back and forth between. The only thing that's really going to change, though, for most students is the tuition component. So once you kind of have the housing and the food and the supplies and miscellaneous and personal, that's really going to stay pretty consistent. But the different drop downs that you're seeing for the resident tier 1 and the non-resident tier 2 and so forth and so on, that just has to do with different majors, and it has to do with the different costs associated with those majors. So I encourage you to come out here and explore this, and contact us if you have questions. We know it's not perfect. We are going to work to enhance these tools, but right now this is what we have to help share this information with you. Okay, the of your aid offer notification. I couldn't fit it all of your notification letter. Oh. Testing. Sorry, I got a message that I was frozen. Now I'm getting a message that I'm good now. I'm gonna go ahead and leave my video off to try to help with the internet connection. We've been having trouble all day in the building, so I apologize for that. Okay, so what I was saying, I think when I got frozen was that the aid offer notification, we're going to go through different sections of that. This is what the top part of it looked at. And one of the things I put in a red box there is that this is not a bill. Okay, again, I said that at the beginning. I'm going to continue to say that. We are doing, the federal government requires us to put this together, but what we're trying to do is in this, we're trying to put the full cost of attendance, and we're trying to show you how far your financial aid will go to help you cover that full cost of attendance, knowing that a lot of those costs are going to vary by student. Okay, so that's why this is not a bill, and we just want to emphasize that. We are trying to give you the best estimate that we can of costs that we don't want you to be surprised by. But again, it's an estimate, and it could vary by student. The other thing you're going to see to the right is a star, and that star is next to the EFC. So we actually pull in your FAFSA information, and we pull in that EFC number that we talked about that's so important in the calculation of need into your financial aid offer notification. You also receive that once you complete your FAFSA. You receive that via email. And you can also access that anytime in your student portal. So the other two things real quick, there's links there for a financial aid offer guide in your aid offer notification, and there's also links to terms and conditions. And I encourage you to go out and read more about that information so you're more well-versed and understand how some of the financial aid programs work. Okay, so estimated cost of attendance or on the actual aid offer notification. So again, we talked about direct costs and indirect costs. So this is where we're showing you those, what we're at, the numbers we're estimating for you, for your situation on our cost of attendance on our aid offer notification. So again, the direct costs, we go ahead and put the housing and tuition up in the direct costs. But one of the things I wanted to call out to you is that the housing and tuition that we are putting in this number, we are using a weighted average based on the number of beds and the cost of those beds on our campus. So this will never be the exact number that's going to show on your bill if you're staying in a residence hall. You could stay in a single, or you could stay in an apartment that's more expensive. You could be in a more inexpensive residence hall. The room rates and types vary greatly on our campus, so we cannot put an exact amount for you that's going to like hit the nail on the head. What I encourage you to do is make sure your tuition and fees are correct based upon what you're planning on majoring in with that cashier's tool. And also, if you've signed a housing contract and they have the rate in that housing contract, I would take what you're seeing on your financial aid for your notification, the amount of financial aid you're getting, I would take that, and we'll show you, we actually put a calculator or a cost analysis sheet up here in a couple slides to help you kind of walk through doing some of that math on your own. We understand this aid offer notification is not perfect. We are constrained a little bit by what we're required to put in here. And the fact of the matter of every student's different. We have a ton of different costs based on your situation and what residence hall and room you're living in. So I promise you, we are doing our best. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing these webinars, to help explain these types of things so you're not surprised by anything. And then of course the indirect costs, we talked about those as well. And then it totals it there. It has it broken out by fall and spring, and then the total academic year. The next section is your estimated financial aid offer. And so in this particular example, I just put one scholarship in there for ease, just to show you an example. And so what's happening here is if you have more than one scholarship or grant, they're all going to be listed here. But in this situation, the student has a curator scholarship, and that's $5,000 total for the year. And you can see it's split evenly between the fall and spring semester. There's columns there. And then by each semester, it's totaling how much they're receiving in the scholarships. They're only getting this one award, so it only has a total of $2,500 per semester, $5,000 for the year. And then it's taking that previous slide where it had the full cost of attendance, and it's subtracting out by term the amount in total scholarships and grants that you're getting. So you can kind of get an estimate of your full cost of attendance costs and what you still have to work with in terms of cost. But again, that's taking in the full cost of attendance. I strongly encourage you to look at just the housing, the meal plan, and your tuition and fees, subtract your aid from that, and see what's remaining after that. The other section that is on the bottom of your aid offer notification is the estimated student loan options. These are not required for you to take them. These are optional, but we want to put those on there. For Missouri residents, we put the federal direct sub and unsubsidized loan. Not everyone is eligible for a subsidized loan. That goes back to a need calculation. If you're not eligible for a subsidized loan, the total amount that we're allowed to offer you will go into the unsubsidized loan. For a non-Missouri resident, we do put a offered Parent Plus loan on there. That does require, all of these loans require additional action. The federal direct sub and unsub, the student has to go in and actively accept it. They have to complete entrance counseling. They have to complete a master promissory note. For the Parent Plus loan, you have to actually go out to studentaid.gov and you have to complete an application. We are going to talk in more detail about loans tomorrow night in our next webinar. So I encourage you to tune into that to get some more details on how those work. You also don't have to take the federal loans. There's also private loans that are also available. The big challenge with private loans is they typically require a cosigner if the student has not built up enough credit. And so a lot of times that ends up being the parent as a cosigner or a family friend that has enough credit to allow that private loan to go through. And we'll talk more about those tomorrow as well in our webinar. So I talked a lot about tuition and fee, like focusing on what are your tuition and fees and what does your housing contract say and what is your meal plan. And so this is the best example that we can give you of these are the direct costs that we want you to focus on the most. And then you total those up on the top part of this. And then the bottom part of it, you put in your scholarships and grants. And then you can put in the federal student loans or not. I kind of like to see what the number is before I'm borrowing. So I understand like how much I need to borrow in order to pay off my actual bill to the university. And then I'm going to budget my other expenses and then figure out what additional loan funds, or am I going to work for some of that to help pay my expenses outside? Because remember, you have to pay your bill up front, or you have to get on a payment plan with the university to pay it. But if you're living off campus, you don't necessarily have to come up with all those miscellaneous expenses day one that you step on campus. And I think that's where the cost of attendance can sometimes really get confusing. Of you see that big number and you think you have to have it all at once, and you don't, not for all of it. And so it's just really important to pay attention to the billing information from the university of what you're going to need up front. And this is a really good worksheet to help you do that. The difference between the student financial aid office and the cashier's office, we get this question a lot. Both of our offices get questions that go for each office. We try really hard to go ahead and answer the questions that we can for each office, but we also sometimes the questions are not ours to answer, so we will direct you to the correct office. But this is just an example of what the two offices do and why they're different. So from the financial aid office, that's the office I work in, we determine a student's aid eligibility. We package them and we repackage your financial aid if your eligibility were to change. We put that onto your student account. And then at a certain point in time when we're allowed to, and the system is ready to go, we send all of your financial aid over to the cashier's office. And that goes first to pay all of the charges on your account. And then if the amount of your financial aid is greater than your charges, then you will receive a refund. Okay. The cashier's office, they're the ones that are actually creating the student bill or creating the charges on your account that you are going to owe the university for your tuition and fees, residence halls, and other thing. I mean, if you get a parking pass, I think they bill it through there. But there's any expenses that the university's billing for that will go through the cashier's office, and it will be put onto your student bill. That's through a program called TouchNet. So if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to go out to the cashier's website, explore that. Read through their policies, read through their payment options. I know that they're going to be coming out with some new information very soon on how to when bills are going to be due, and we're going to talk about that in a second as well. But they basically receive the financial aid from us. It applies to the charges first, then they refund it to you if it's greater than the charges. If the aid's not greater than the charges, then you're still going to owe money, and you would pay the cashier's office that amount of balance that's due. Questions about the type and amounts of financial aid programs come to student financial aid, and then typically questions that are specific to your bill and how much you owe go to the cashiers. Now, we are very aware that sometimes those questions overlap, and we work really hard to work with each other to get those answers to you. Okay, so we get a lot of questions about, okay, so I got my financial aid offer notification, like, how does it all work? Like, what happens? So we kind of just talked about the difference between financial aid and cashiers, but here's the order of operations. So you're gonna get your financial aid offer notification, and as an incoming freshman or transfer, you get a paper one mailed to you, and then from there on out, we're gonna email you any revised notices. We're going to want you to ensure that all your to-do list items are completed. You do that by logging into Mizzou and checking your to-do list. Please know that the financial aid offer notification that we are sending out to you, that is tentative until all of your to-do items are completed on your list. So it's really important to do those early. If you wait till August or if you wait till even July, we start to get anywhere from 500 to 800 inquiries, calls, emails, walk-ins, appointments a day. And so our workloads goes up significantly, and we can't always get through that entire amount of workload in a timely fashion before the bills due if everyone waits until August to address these things. So if you're listening to this webinar, hopefully it's because you want to be proactive, and we are here to help you. So please, if you have a to-do list item, you don't understand it, don't hesitate to give us a call, email us, and we will walk you through that. You're going to want to start to think about everything we've talked about in how much financial aid you're getting, what you think you're going to still owe, or what you might not still owe, but you still need additional funds to help you pay with some of those other variable expenses in the cost of attendance. You're going to want to start to take those steps to secure your federal or private loans to help fill the gap if you are choosing to go that route. The other thing is charges eventually are going to show up on your student account. Right now, we expect those charges to actually go onto your account in August, and the financial aid at that point will show on your charges or on your cashier's bill on the cashier's side. It'll show as anticipated aid until we get closer to the time that the term starts. So around 8 to 10 days prior to the term starting is when we'll start to disperse that aid, and it'll actually be in a more live format. Approximately 8 to 10 days. Oh, I just talked about that. That we will disperse the aid or pay it to the student bill. And then your first bill for this fall 2023 term will be due September 10th. Okay. So you're going to be getting more information. The cashier's office is going to be publishing more information. They're going to be emailing more information out to families and students about the billing process, because some of the dates for this fall term are going to be different than what they've been in the past. Okay, so what to think about next? So we talked about at the bottom of the financial aid offer notification, at the top and the bottom, there are critical next steps that we are advising you to take. There's QR codes there to actually get you to the actual websites to look at these. I'm not going to go through all of these individually right now. I just want to make you aware of them so you can get familiar with them, read through them. So again, you're not surprised by anything when it comes to how aid is awarded and things that you wish you would have known to do, but didn't necessarily do it, because we want to make sure that you have that information so you can do that. So logging into Mizzou and checking your to-do list, we talked about how critical this is and to do it as soon as possible. One of the reasons why that's critical is a lot of times we need more documentation. Not because we just want to collect your documentation. Honestly, we don't, but we have to sometimes from the federal government makes us. They do a process called verification. There are certain things where we have to verify. It's kind of like an audit, but that's not the word for it. It's just we have to verify the information that you actually put on your FAFSA. So sometimes that requires us to get official tax documentation or non-filing statements or something like that from you. We're going to tell you exactly what we need in that to-do list, and you can click through on those outstanding items. I already told you, or I already asked you not to wait till July or August. That was my plug there. So, but on the actual outstanding items, you can click on those. And when you click on those, there's going to be significantly more detail and links to the forms we need you to fill out and exactly what we need you to complete. Now, we know that this information sometimes is confusing. We know that. It's confusing for us sometimes. We are always going to do the best we can to explain things to you in these to-do list items, but if you don't get it or you don't understand it, there is zero shame in that. Please give us a call, send us an email, and we will help you through it. This is not easy stuff when you get selected for this and we have to get additional information. And sometimes you don't always have the documents handy, which is another reason why we really want you to complete this process early so you have plenty of time to collect that documentation, get it to us. We have plenty of time to review it, and your financial aid's not getting held up. You're not getting late fees because your bill's not getting paid, so forth and so on. Okay, another thing you might want to consider, again, another QR code to lead you right there, is a student, once they become a student, is they have to provide access, or they have to grant access to others that they want to have access to their educational records and their financial aid information, so forth and so on. So they can go through Mizzou One. This is the easiest path to do it. The QR code's there, the link's there, and there's multiple things that you need to read through and decide if you want to grant others access to things. So I put a screenshot of all of the ones that you would want to consider there. And so I strongly encourage you to go through all of those, read through all of those, make sure that you know what you're giving access to. The parent cannot do this for the student. The student has to do this for themselves because they have to be the one granting the information. So, or granting the access so this parent can get the information. And we know sometimes that gets frustrating for parents because if a student hasn't granted the information, we cannot provide information to the parent, even though they sometimes are needing that information to pay the bill. So it's really important that the parent and student work together to get that access completed so we can talk to both of you. Or if not, it's okay to go through the student and get it done through the student. Okay, that from an informational standpoint, I have concluded with my slides, but I have two more just to make sure you have information. So there are more sessions coming up tomorrow and Thursday evenings. QR code there for the links to those. We're going to talk tomorrow. We're going to talk in a lot more detail about using loans and other types of financial aid, and really financial aid in general, and then options for out-of-state Tigers. And then we have drop-in sessions that are happening next week. From 4 to 6 p.m. There's Zoom drop-ins. So you can literally just click on the link and we're going to have a bunch of people in breakout rooms and we're going to have a chat with anybody that wants to have a chat with us about their personal financial aid account. You can also book an appointment with us, and all of our contact information there is there. If you still have questions, we are here to help. And so we just want to make sure that you're aware that these options are here and how to contact us. And so that concludes our webinar for tonight. I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for dealing with the slight technical difficulty there. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow for the next webinar. But everybody have a safe and happy night. Thanks so much for joining us.